Good afternoon, team. What is happening? Welcome to the Standard Podcast, where we raise the bar, rebuild the culture, and call off the lies or misconceptions that nobody else will. This isn't motivation. This is a movement. I'm Thomas Rowe, and I'm joined with my host, Aaron Charles. And today we're sitting down with Jeff Durr, senior partner of RU Financial Athletic Department and senior vice president and chief development officer at MassMutual, who has spent over 35 years in financial services, helping athletes build financial game plans for life well after sports. Jeff's journey began on the football field at the University of Maine, where he earned his degree in psychology while competing as a member of the NCAA Varsity Football team. In Orono, he learned the values of discipline, resilience, preparation, and team-first leadership, lessons that continue to shape his life and career today. Since entering the financial services industry in 1988, Jeff has carried the athlete's mindset into his role coaching advisors nationwide and specializing in helping current and former college athletes navigate the financial transition well beyond athletics. He's also the host of the Are You Strong podcast, highlighting stories of perseverance and transition beyond athletics. Jeff believes the same qualities that drive success on the field, discipline, courage, and work ethic, create lasting success in life and in business. His mission is helping athletes understand that the skills they develop in sports are transferable assets for building financial security and career success. We're diving into the truth behind what it really takes to build identity, discipline, and legacy in sports and in life. Let's get into it. Jeff, welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you here. We really appreciate it.
And I am excited to be on. And that intro, boy, it makes me sound important. That's good. It's good.
Awesome. Well,
glad to be here.
Thank you. It's well deserved. So you've spent over 35 years in financial services, helping athletes build financial game plans for life and in sports. What does raising the standard mean to you in the work you're doing right now and with current and former college athletes?
You know, that question, I always got to go back to Nick Saban, you know, and Nick Saban's got so many cool lines, you know, and I took it from him, I don't know how many years ago, but refusing to settle for average, right?
Yeah.
It's showing up early, doing the work, you know, being accountable, not just to yourself, but to your team, you know, and that mindset, it should carry through when you get out of school and get into the real world.
Yeah. What did he say? That mediocre people dislike high achievers and high achievers dislike. Yeah. Totally.
They don't want to work together. They don't want to be together.
Yeah. 100%. And I think where you and I are right now in our careers, we can identify high achievers right off the bat, right? And then there are those that just want to do enough to just get by, and we don't gravitate to those people at all.
Some guys just like being on the team.
That's it, and that's okay. The world needs worker bees, and I'm cool with that. Yeah. What do you think is the biggest lie that the culture of the financial industry has sold athletes about money, financial planning, and what it means or what happens when the game ends?
I think if you go backwards a little bit, the biggest lie to any athlete is that their identity is their sport.
100%.
Right. And then when the sport is over, like say for me, I was a football player, you know, or maybe a wrestler or maybe a baseball player, you know, it's when the game is over, you know, many of them just feel lost. You know, they're not really sure what's next, you know, and when people are chatting with them after the game is over, the helmet's off for the last time, they don't know how to even have a conversation.
Right.
And people stop asking them about the game and the sport, and they just stop talking to them. Now they feel the athletes just feel lost, and they don't understand that the athletic world they're in was really the training ground to get them ready for life after the game.
100%. You know, and this podcast is not about me, it's about you, but just to drive this point home, I remember one time I was sitting at a bar. This was a couple of years ago in middle America. And we were just kind of this guy at the end of the bar, he and I struck up a conversation. And I couldn't believe that he went back and he was telling me about how he threw the winning touchdown in the high school championship back in 1965. And I was like, wow, you're still talking about that. Okay.
Al Bundy.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So you played NCAA football at Maine and learned the values of discipline, resilience, and preparation, and team first leadership.
Yeah.
How did those lessons from Orono shape your approach to helping athletes navigate financial transitions?
Well, when you think about the lessons we learn in sports, it prepared me for business. It prepared me for leadership. And when I came into the financial world forever ago, my first day on the job was June 1st, 1988. And I knew as soon as I started in the business, like I didn't want to just be a regular advisor helping people with their wealth and their protection and what have you, which is still extremely important. I wanted to lead the team. I don't want to say be in charge, but I wanted to make a difference, not just in an individual or a family, but in the organization. Right. And I wanted to help the organization grow. So that leadership that I learned from playing college football prepared me for, hey, how do I run a business? How do I start a business? How do I, make a difference in other people's lives?
Oh, no question. We had a coach one time that he said the world's divided into two people, assets and liabilities.
Yeah.
I have no room on my team for liabilities. Go home, let your parents and your girlfriend tell you how great you are. If you're a liability, you're gone. I thought, wow, that was pretty insightful, no question. Yeah. Also, with sports, it's so great. Do you want to watch the game or do you want to play the game? Right. So you're talking about June of 88.
Right now, I'd rather watch.
Right. So true.
Yeah.
From here, we're going to go into segment 2, which is identity and legacy. And I'm going to it over to Aaron. Aaron, take it away. It's all yours.
Okay. So I want you to share with us just who is Jifter beyond all the accolades that Thomas shared at the top of the show. Tell our audience who you are and what values shape who you've become.
Aaron, that's an awesome question. And I get that. I don't want to say a lot, but enough. And the one word that I typically use is a mentor. I'm a mentor. I help build people, I help them build their career. And the one thing I think I do pretty good at is I help people change the way they think about themselves, the way they look at themselves, the way they think about themselves. Because when they're athletes, that's all they think about when they're in their sport. Well, now when that sport's over, now what? How do I look at myself? How do I think about myself? How do I view myself? Where do I see myself? So I think I mentor all of that.
I love that so much because I think it's so important that they get that experience because I think they get so much of their identity through sports and it's reinforced with their coaches and everybody around them. And so I love that answer. That's so profound. I love that.
Not everybody wants to change the way they think either.
No. I think that's where it's like if you can get them younger, hopefully it makes that much easier. Or you have that pivotal moment as you've aged and grown that you're like, oh, I should probably, be a little bit more open to learning. So with that, you believe that the same qualities that drive success on the field, discipline, courage, work ethic, create lasting success in life and in business. What does legacy beyond athletic achievement mean to you, especially someone helping athletes build their financial future?
Well, you think about legacy. It's for me, the legacy I want to leave behind is that I became a better leader, right? A better husband, a better father, a better coach, and I want to leave that behind when that one day ever comes where we're no longer here. But I think also every athlete needs to understand that sooner or later they're going to leave a legacy, and they have to realize that the legacy it's not just their sport. It's what they've done after the game, who they've touched, who they've impacted, and the difference they made in other people's lives.
Yeah, I love that. That element of impact that lasts far beyond what they're doing right in the moment. Yeah. It's hard to sometimes know, okay, what I'm doing now impacts long-term beyond this moment. So this is now about your podcast. So your strong Are You Strong
Are You Strong?
podcast.
Yep.
Are You Strong podcast highlights stories of perseverance and transition beyond athletics.
Right.
What separates athletes who successfully transition from sports to financial and career success from those that struggle? And what's the character piece that most miss?
Man, that's a great question. I think, those who succeed, they take what they've learned from their sport, meaning their coachability. You got to be coachable. You got to be courageous. You have to have discipline, work ethic. You have to be resilient. Those who bring that with them from their sport, and they learn that from their sport, and they bring it into our world, man, they just light the world on fire. Those who leave that behind and say, well, I could do it better. I'm going to do it my way. I'm not really going to listen. They don't have the courage to do things that are outside their comfort zone. They don't typically do too well.
Yeah. Wow. There's two words that I love in what you said: coachability and courage, like having the ability to step outside your comfort zone to really try something. Right. And I think that's huge. I mean, being able to be receptive to learn from other people, I think is an area we could all, I think, adopt and excel in as human beings.
A lot of people talk about constructive criticism, and I don't like that word, criticism, because I always think, hey, you're making fun of somebody. I like to say constructive correction. Are they open to correction? Because when do you want to know you're doing something wrong, now or later? Tell me now. Let's fix that stuff now. And so I'm out there in front of somebody, it's fixed, ready to go.
I love that. And do you want to keep doing the same thing, not getting great results? So it's like, does somebody have a vested interest in me for me to learn from them?
Yeah. You want to keep making the same mistake.
Yep. It's like, okay, somebody told me I shouldn't be doing this. Oh,
yeah.
So I've now got burned a few times. I got this now. I know what they're saying.
Yeah.
So with that, what's one truth you wish every athlete, parent, or coach understood about the financial transition from sports and building wealth that lasts?
Oh, man, that's huge. I think what everybody has to understand is that the game, whatever game they're playing, ends for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the habits you built while you were playing the game, I don't care what game you're playing, like we said before, discipline, accountability, work ethic, teamwork, what have you, it sets them up for the next 50, 60 years of their life. And if they take that with them and they understand that the game's going to end, some of these young men and women don't think the game's ever going to end, but when it does, is they got to be able to bring what they've learned with them and understand that gets them ready for the next 50 years.
I love that. That's yes. Listen up. It ends at some point, kids, whether it's 48 and you're Tom Brady or you're, 25 or 18 and but what I think we've kind of missed is the great skills that you learn being a part of sports.
Right.
And how those translate into really every aspect of life, but that you can really excel in because of that.
Yeah.
Okay, Thomas is back in charge of the questions now.
Excellent, Jeff. To build off what you were talking about, we met earlier, I guess a couple of weeks back, and my dad was a career military man in the Marine Corps, and he had 4 kids and he had 3 boys. If it wasn't sports, he definitely wanted us to go into the military simply because he thinks that the military gives young men and women structure. Sure. But the fact that we went into organized sports like you did at Maine, think about, and I say this all the time, the things that I learned in my fraternity as well as in the locker room far surpass the things I learned in the classroom, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, some of the things in the fraternity we can't talk about on the podcast, but...
Or the locker room either.
That's true. So, Jeff, if you could sit down with yourself as a young athlete at Maine, before you understood the financial lessons you know now, what advice would you give that version of Jeff?
That's a great question. And I've looked back on that many times and say, hey, what would I do different? And I think it's start preparing early for life after the game is over. Start earlier. Start thinking about it your freshman year, your sophomore year, your junior year, before it's your senior year and the helmet's off for the last time. And now what?
Right.
I would say build on relationships that you have, build on relationships that you don't have yet. And the big thing is learn about money. Learn about money early. Don't wait till you got your first job or your second job and you're starting to think about money. Start worrying about money as a freshman, as a sophomore, as a junior. So this way, when you're in the real world, it's not a shock.
Right. That's so easy to say in theory, right? One of the things that Aaron and I talk about with our clients is when we're like, hey, so-and-so, how old are you? And they're like, I'm 20, I'm 22, I'm 24. And I say, great. Okay, listen, I was 20, I was 22, and I was 24. You weren't 55. So please listen to what I have to share with you, because that's so important. And the next question is the big $1 million question, no pun intended. We're talking about finances. When you and I were playing, there was no transfer portal. There was no NIL, right? So what about these current college athletes who are earning some strong NIL money, but may not understand long-term financial planning? What do they need to know about building wealth beyond their playing days?
Well, I think that the first thing they have to understand in the beginning is how to protect it, how to protect their wealth, and that, and then taxes. You protect their wealth. How do they're accumulating it now because they're playing and they're earning it. It's starting to accumulate. Well, how do you protect it in case something goes wrong? Right. Then our buddy, the IRS, how do you plan for that? And make sure that you understand that, the IRS wants a big chunk of those dollars that you're earning. And what I'm seeing, these young people are getting these big chunks of dollars and, they're having a little bit too much fun. There's too much. I would say there's too much month at the end of the money and too much fun at the beginning of the money.
Yep.
And next thing you know, they're behind the eight ball. So it's prepare for the IRS, to make sure you understand what's going on and protect your wealth, because your health is your most valuable asset, and your health is what helps you build the wealth.
No question. It's not just about preparing for taxes. It's also about building, talking to somebody like yourself and say, do I need an LLC or an S corp? What do I need to shelter this money? Because you're right. I mean, it eventually the game's going to end. And unfortunately right now, with NIL, some of these athletes, they're going to hit their highest earning potential at 19, 20, 21, right? And if they don't go pro, they need to hold on to that money for as long as they can.
Mm-hmm.
So you coach advisors nationwide and work with former athletes making that transition. What advice would you give a recently retired or transitioning athlete about leveraging their athletic skills into financial and business success?
Well, I mean, their athletic skills, like we mentioned before, it's the discipline, it's the work ethic, it's the coachability, it's the courage. You need that going into the professional world. I don't care what you're doing, especially if you're in an entrepreneurial type career like ours. You need to have that discipline to stick to what I call the mundane. You have to be great at the mundane, the boring.
Sure.
And then is how do you learn? How do you develop? Are you willing to get better? Are you waking up every day thinking, how much better can I get? Can I become an expert at what I'm doing? And how do I get there? And it's not a success overnight. I don't care what you're doing, what business you're in. It's one day at a time, one grind at a time, and focus on the process, which we hear a million times as athletes. Focus on the process, not the outcome or the result.
Right.
Because we don't control the outcome. We only control the process.
100%. And what about for parents and coaches? What do they need to understand about helping athletes prepare financially for life after sports while they're still competing? I mean, before you answer that, one of the things Aaron and I have discussed, and we've met with other professionals like yourself, where they say parents are the problem, right? And now we're seeing that more and more. So what advice do you give parents and coaches?
I mean, the parents and coaches have to understand that these kids are kids. Right. These kids are still trying to grow up. They're still trying to mature. They're trying to figure out life. And then they're getting thrown. If you look at the big NIL deals in college, these kids are getting millions of dollars thrown at them. I sit down with people 50 years old with millions of dollars, and they can't handle it, let alone here's an 18, 19, 22, 23-year-old kid who's got 2, 4, 5, 10 million in front of them. And we expect them to understand the value of money and what they need to do with it. And so I think the coaches and the parents have to be patient. I say patiently in a rush, with the progression of the young student who is an athlete trying to figure out, like, they can't handle $500 on the weekend, let alone 5 million.
Right. Okay.
So, and I think the parents are impatient with that. And I think from a coach's standpoint, I think the coaches are more focused on winning and recruiting, and they don't really put a lot of emphasis on, well, what's going on with the kids and their personal development, let alone financial development.
No question. With that, I'm going to turn it back to Aaron, segment 4, which is the rapid fire round. Aaron, take it away.
Okay, I'm back. Okay, I'm going to start my sentence and I'm going to have you finish it for me, okay?
Okay.
So discipline equals.
Discipline. What does Mike Tyson say? It's doing things that you hate, but acting like you love it. But I just think it's just doing the hard things consistently. And you hear Jocko, he says discipline equals freedom. You know what I mean? But it's just doing the hard things consistently.
I love that. What about leadership? Leadership equals.
Leadership equals. I think, and some people might look at this differently, but it's serving others before yourself.
Yep. Spot on.
Yeah.
Faith equals.
Just trusting the path. You just got to have faith that things are going to turn out. If you follow the right path, you're going to get the right result. Yep.
100%. Legacy equals.
I always say, hey, it's the impact you leave on other people's lives. It's when you're no longer here that they're going to remember the impact you made.
What is one thing that you would never compromise on?
That's a good one. But I think looking at, your sport's temporary. Whatever sport you're in, it's just temporary, but your character is everything. Your character is permanent.
Yep. It's going with you, whether you're on the field or off the field.
Yeah.
And what is one message you'd put on a billboard for athletes, parents, and coaches today?
Just take everything seriously and take nothing for granted.
Oh, beautiful. That is so good. That is so good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Most people don't take things seriously and they take everything for granted.
100%. I've been guilty of that.
Yeah, we all are.
Yep. Excellent, Jeff. From here, we're going to click it into our closing segment, and we're going to make it. So what we want to do here at the end is, before we get into a few other questions, before we wrap up, is there something we didn't touch on today that you feel athletes, parents, or coaches need to hear about financial planning and the transition from sports? This is kind of an open floor, free flowing, whatever's on your mind, go ahead and share.
I just think that athletes, if you just look at their transition from sports to wherever career they're going into, they just need to realize that they have the skill that all the corporations are looking for. Right. And many times it's not what they've learned in the classroom. It's what they've learned in the locker room, like you said before, or or on the field, or in the team meeting, or on the bus, or on the plane, or in the hotel. They've learned how to intertwine and work with others, and they learned how to be leaders. They've learned how to be teammates, and they've learned how to pull other people along with them. And a lot of companies look for that. And just apply that outside of the game, and apply what you learn from the game in life and in whatever business you want to be in. And then when it comes to the financial world, and, understand that you don't know a lot, understand there's a lot to learn, understand that there's people that have been doing it for a long time. Like you said before, you were 55, they're only 18. They don't understand what's coming down the road. And just be open to what I call constructive correction.
I love that. Constructive correction. Is that it? I'm going to have to use that.
Yeah.
Okay. In the wonderful world of art imitating life, top 3 sports movies, any genre.
Oh my God. Jeff. Top 3 sports movies? Now you catch me on that one.
Now you're on the hot seat. You went from rapid fire to the hot seat.
Yeah. So top 3 sports movies. Remember the Titans?
Sure.
That's a big one. Obviously, everybody loves Rudy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Come on.
But I don't know if you call this a sports movie, but it is Rocky. The first Rocky is. I remember being 11 years old watching that movie, running from the movie theater all the way home. And that is just like the ultimate classic.
Because I've got for my number 1 is Miracle. And then number 2 is Rocky. Number 3 is Hoosiers, and there's a whole bunch of honorable mentions. Well, in the spirit of basketball, we are coming up on the Final Four.
Yeah.
No pressure. I went to Arizona. So who is your pick to take it all? Hey guys, Jeff is going to take Arizona. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm kidding, Jeff. Go ahead.
I'm a Bobby Hurley fan.
Okay.
I'm a Dan Hurley fan. I'm a Hurley family fan. They're literally 20 miles from where my office is, where they grew up in Jersey City, or they went to school. And I just like the Hurley attitude, man. It's just like, let's go. And that game the other night, when he hit that shot, he was going berserk. But did you see the mother?
Yes.
The video of the mother? That was classic.
We talk about locker room mouth.
Yeah.
My goodness. I mean, you didn't have to hear. You could read her lips on that one.
That was great. That was great.
Amazing. Well, I tell you what, it's going to be, regardless of who goes and wins it all, there's a lot of great basketball that's going to get played here. So it's not a layup or a gimme for anybody.
Right.
Jeff, where can people get a hold of you? Where can they connect with you?
I'm everywhere.
Whether that's your website, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's social media.
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, just my name on LinkedIn. Our company website, rufinancial.net. They can find the company and learn more about what we do there. I'm on Instagram. I have an RU Strong Instagram page, which has all my interviews on there. I have an RU Financial Instagram page, which I have my own Instagram page. I'm on Twitter and I'm on TikTok. I'm one of the new guys on TikTok. So I can be found almost anywhere on social media.
Great. Team everywhere except OnlyFans. Jeff has
I am not there yet. No.
He's not crossed that chasm yet. Jeff, thank you so much for showing up with us today and carrying an athlete's mindset into financial success that really works. Team, if this conversation hits you, do 2 things for us. 1, share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. An athlete transitioning from sports, a parent helping their child plan financially, or even parents that need to plan financially for themselves. A coach preparing for athletes well beyond the sport and competition. And 2, connect with Jeff at rufinancial.net. Follow the RU Strong podcast on YouTube and Spotify. And check out at Jeff Durr. That's JEFFDURR. And also at RU_strong_podcast. And if you're an athlete needing financial guidance, Jeff brings an understanding for someone who's walked your path. And if you're an athlete, parent, or coach ready to raise the standard, check us out at blueprintbluechip.com. We help athletes build identity, discipline, and a legacy that goes well beyond the game. Team, this is the Standard Podcast, and this movement only grows when we raise the standard together. Talent fades, but truth endures. Let's raise the bar. Let's rebuild the culture. Let's become the standard. Jeff, Aaron, thank you so much for joining us today. We're super excited. Go Cats.
Thanks for having me. It's been great being on the show.
Awesome.